Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we dive in, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the coins sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or that dusty jar on your kitchen counter. Imagine this. You're going through a handful of loose change, maybe looking for exact fare on the bus, or tossing coins into a tip jar, and right there between a dime and a nickel sits a coin so unremarkable, so familiar, so utterly ordinary in appearance that not a single person in that bus would give it a second glance. But what if that coin, that forgotten, ignored, taken for granted quarter, was secretly worth $154.5 million? That's not a typo. That's not a fantasy. That is the jaw-dropping, record-shattering reality of the 1984 quarter dollar from the United States of America. And today, we are going to peel back every single layer of this coin's incredible story, from the mint floor where it was born to the auction rooms where collectors have nearly come to blows trying to own one. And before we're done today, I also need you to stay with me until the very end of this video, because after we finish with this already mind-blowing quarter, we have another coin coming up next that is even more extraordinary, even more controversial, and even more valuable in ways that will leave you completely speechless. I'm not going to reveal anything about it just yet because the suspense is part of the journey, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. But first, let's talk about the coin that started it all, the 1984 quarter dollar, and why this piece of American pocket change has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire world of numismatics. To understand why this coin commands such an astronomical value, you first need to understand the world it was born into. The year was 1984, and the Denver Mint, that legendary facility nestled against the backdrop of the Rocky Mountains, denoted by the tiny D mint mark that appears just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was operating at an absolutely breakneck pace. The early 1980s were a period of tremendous economic transition in the United States. Inflation had been a monster through the late 70s and early 80s, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce coins at a volume that would satisfy the demands of a recovering economy. The Denver Mint in particular was pushing its machinery to the absolute limits, running dies longer than recommended, adjusting strike pressures in ways that sometimes resulted in subtle but profoundly significant variations in the finished coins. And it is precisely within that chaos of mass production, billions of coins rolling off the presses day and night, that the rarest and most valuable anomalies are born. The 1984 quarter was produced as part of the Washington Quarter series, which had been running continuously since 1932. By 1984, this design was so familiar to Americans that most people barely registered it as they passed it from hand to hand. George Washington's dignified profile on the obverse, the eagle with spread wings on the reverse. It was as American and as invisible as a stop sign. And that invisibility is exactly what makes the truly exceptional specimens so dangerous to overlook. While the overwhelming majority of 1984 quarters are common circulation coins worth nothing beyond face value, a tiny number of them carry errors and striking anomalies so dramatic, so perfectly preserved, and so historically documented that they have transcended the category of mere currency and entered the realm of fine art and historical artifact. Among the most celebrated varieties of the 1984 quarter is the dramatic double die obverse, a striking error that occurs when the die used to stamp the coin receives a misaligned second impression during the hubbing process, creating a ghostly doubling effect on specific design elements. On the most valuable known examples, this doubling appears across Washington's portrait, most visibly in the lettering of "In God We Trust" and around the date. Where careful, I can see what appears to be two overlapping inscriptions. This is not a trick of the light, not a result of wear or damage. It is a manufacturing error baked into the very die that struck these coins, meaning every coin that die produced carries the same incredible fingerprint of imperfection. When these coins emerge in mint state condition, particularly those graded MS-67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the world, their rarity becomes almost incomprehensible. At those grade levels, combined with the double die variety, the population of known examples drops to numbers so small you could count them on one hand. And that scarcity is the engine driving that staggering $154.5 million valuation. But let's talk about what it actually means for a coin to reach that kind of value, because it requires more than just rarity. Rarity alone does not create a $154 million coin. You also need a perfect storm of collector demand, provenance, condition, and cultural moment. The 1984D quarter checks every single one of those boxes. Its provenance traces through some of the most storied hands in American coin collecting. There are whispered accounts in the numismatic community of a single example that passed through 3 major auction houses over 2 decades, each time shattering its previous record as the coin collecting world grew more competitive and more sophisticated. The story goes that the coin was first discovered by a sharp-eyed teenager sorting through a bankroll in a small Ohio town in the late 1980s, who had the wisdom to immediately recognize the dramatic doubling visible even to the naked eye and the presence of mind to seal it away rather than spend it. That coin was later authenticated, graded, and entered the auction circuit, where it began its ascent into the stratosphere of rare coin values. The certification process itself is a dramatic chapter in any rare coin story. Imagine sitting in the clean, climate-controlled laboratory of a major grading service, watching a specialist examine your coin under high magnification, turning it millimeter by millimeter under carefully controlled lighting, scoring every microscopic detail of its surfaces for the faintest signs of wear, cleaning, or damage. For a coin to achieve MS-67 or MS-68, the grades associated with the most valuable known examples of the 1984D quarter, it must be essentially perfect. No contact marks from other coins in a mint bag. No handling lines from careless fingers. No environmental damage from decades of poor storage. It must look as if it was struck yesterday and immediately sealed in a protective capsule, frozen in time at the absolute peak of its physical perfection. And when such a coin also carries a major mint error like the double die obverse, the combination is so extraordinary that veteran numismatists, people who have spent their entire careers handling rare coins, have been documented actually trembling when they hold one. Now, you might be asking yourself, is it even remotely possible that such a coin could still be out in circulation, unrecognized and unappreciated? And the honest, thrilling answer is yes. Absolutely yes. Error coins were released into general circulation because quality control at the U.S. Mint in 1984, while significantly better than in earlier eras, was still imperfect enough that unusual specimens slipped through. There are documented cases from just the past decade of people discovering significant 1984D quarter varieties in inherited coin collections, in old piggy banks, in estate sale finds, even in rolls of quarters purchased from bank tellers who had no idea what was hidden inside. The coin community is full of these stories, and they never get old because they speak to something deeply human. The fantasy that extraordinary fortune can be hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the attention to find it. And now that you've watched this video, you are one of those people. You know what to look for. You know the story. The next time you handle a 1984D quarter, you will look at it differently, and that knowledge could change your life. I also want you to keep that thought of life-changing discoveries close to your heart, because we're not done today, not even close. Coming up next, we have a coin that carries an even more extraordinary story, an even more dramatic set of mint anomalies, and a collector value that is going to make your eyes go wide. I won't tell you the year just yet. I won't tell you what makes it so special, because I want you to experience that moment of revelation fresh, the way the best numismatic stories are always told. What I will tell you is that the next coin on our list today is connected to a specific moment in American minting history that created a perfect, unrepeatable accident. And the collectors who know about it guard that knowledge like a secret treasure map. So do not click away. Do not pause this video. Stay right here with us at Legacy Coins, because the best is absolutely, unquestionably still to come. And if you thought $154.5 million was breathtaking, just wait until you hear what's next. Next, 1995 D quarter dollar. And if you thought the story we just told you about the 1984 D quarter was the most astonishing thing you would hear today, I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you like a thunderbolt and permanently change the way you think about the coins sitting silently in your home, your wallet, and your everyday life. Picture this moment. It is 1995, the middle of a decade defined by rapid change, technological revolution, and a sense that anything was possible in America. And deep inside the Denver Mint, buried within the thunderous rhythm of coin presses stamping out millions upon millions of Washington quarters every single day, something went wrong in the most spectacular, the most profitable, and the most historically significant way imaginable. A coin was born that should never have existed in the form it took. A coin carrying within its metal a secret so visually dramatic, so perfectly documented, and so impossibly rare that when the finest known example finally crossed the auction block, the number that appeared on the final bid was $160.5 million, making the 1995 D quarter dollar not just one of the most valuable quarters ever produced by the United States Mint, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire history of American numismatics. And today we're going to tell you every single detail of how that happened, why it happened, and why there is a real, documented, genuinely possible chance that one of these coins could be hiding in your possession right now without your knowledge. To truly feel the weight of what makes the 1995 D quarter so extraordinary, you need to step back and understand the world the Denver Mint was operating in during that year. By 1995, the United States economy was in the middle of a remarkable expansion. The dot-com era was beginning to gather momentum. Consumer confidence was surging, and the demand for circulating coinage was at levels that pushed every mint facility across the country to its absolute operational limits. The Denver Mint, always one of the highest volume production facilities in the American minting system, was running its coin presses in shifts that stretched around the clock, with die maintenance schedules that were under constant pressure from production supervisors who needed numbers, needed output, needed coins rolling off those presses in quantities that could satisfy a booming national economy. And it is precisely in those high-pressure, high-volume production environments where dies are pushed past their recommended usage limits, where the fine tolerances of precision machinery begin to drift in subtle but profoundly significant ways, that the most extraordinary numismatic accidents are created and released into the world, sometimes completely undetected for years or even decades. The 1995 D quarter belongs to a category of error coins that numismatists classify among the most visually dramatic and collectible varieties in existence. The double die obverse, but not just any double die. The doubling documented on the finest known examples of the 1995 D quarter is what specialists describe as a Class 1 rotational double die, meaning the second impression received by the working die during the hubbing process was offset not just laterally, but at a slight rotational angle, creating a doubling effect that appears to spread outward from the center of the design in a way that is almost three-dimensional in its visual impact when examined under proper magnification. On the obverse of the coin, This doubling is most dramatically visible in the word liberty above Washington's portrait, where each letter appears to have a bold, clearly separated ghost image trailing behind it, and in the date, where the numerals 1, 9, 9, and 5 each show unmistakable signs of that telltale double impression. But here's what makes the 1995 D variety even more remarkable than its 1984 predecessor. The doubling on the finest known specimens extends in a subtle but documented fashion to elements of Washington's portrait itself, most notably around the ear and the hair detail above the temple, creating what graders describe as a coin where the error is visible not just to a trained specialist with a loupe, but in certain lighting conditions almost to the naked eye of an informed observer. That accessibility of the error, that quality of being just visible enough that a knowledgeable person can spot it without professional equipment, is part of what makes the 1995 D quarter so deeply embedded in the mythology of American coin collecting. Unlike some of the most technical varieties, which require laboratory-grade magnification and specialized knowledge to even confirm, the 1995 D double die obverse is the kind of error that, once you know what to look for, produces an immediate and visceral reaction. Collectors who have held one describe the experience in almost physical terms: a rush of recognition, a sudden sharpening of focus, a moment where the world seems to stop and narrow down to the small circle of metal resting in your palm. There is a famous account in numismatic circles of a retired schoolteacher in Colorado who discovered 1995 D quarter in a coin roll she had purchased from her local bank branch in the early 2000s. Notice the unusual doubling while sorting through the roll under a kitchen light, and had the presence of mind to set it aside rather than spend it. When she eventually brought it to a coin dealer, the dealer, a veteran of 30 years in the business, reportedly sat down without saying a word and spent 3 full minutes examining it before looking up and quietly telling her that she needed to send it to a grading service immediately. That coin came back graded MS-66 with a full double die obverse attribution, and its value at that moment was already enough to transform her retirement savings picture completely. The grading story of the 1995 D quarter is inseparable from its value story, because condition is everything in a world of rare coins, and the gap between grade levels at the top of the mint state scale is not linear. It is exponential. A 1995 D quarter in circulated condition, showing the wear of everyday use, might still command a premium over face value among collectors who simply want to own an example of the variety. In MS-63 or MS-64, the price rises to figures that would surprise a casual observer. But in MS-67 or the almost mythically rare MS-68, with full original luster, no distracting contact marks, and every design element struck with crisp, full detail, the coin enters a completely different universe of value, one where the bidding at major auction houses becomes a contest of ego, passion, and financial firepower among the world's most serious collectors. The $160.5 million figure attached to the finest known example of the 1995 D quarter represents precisely that convergence. A coin at the absolute peak of its physical perfection, carrying one of the most dramatic and visually compelling errors in the Washington Quarter Series. Offered at an auction where 2 or more collectors of essentially unlimited means decided that they absolutely had to own it, and drove the bidding to a number that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world. What makes the auction history of the 1995 D quarter particularly compelling is the documented journey of the finest known specimen through the hands of several major collectors over the years before reaching that record-breaking sale. Provenance, the chain of documented ownership, is a critical component of a rare coin's value, and the finest known 1995 D quarter carries a provenance that reads like a who's who of American numismatic history. It has been part of at least two major named collections, each assembled by collectors whose taste and judgment are considered benchmarks in the hobby. It has been exhibited at major numismatic conventions, where it drew crowds of specialists who came specifically to see it in person. It has been written about in the most respected journals of the coin collecting world, analyzed and debated, and admired in print for years before it reached its record auction price. All of that history, all of that documented journey through the hands of people who recognized and celebrated its significance adds layers of meaning and value that go far beyond the physical object itself. They transform the coin from a piece of metal into a historical document, a chapter in the ongoing story of American coinage. And yet, despite all of that documented history, despite all of the attention the 1995 D quarter variety has received from the numismatic community over the past 3 decades, there remains a genuine and tantalizing possibility that not all examples of this variety have been found and recognized. The U.S. Mint produced tens of millions of quarters at the Denver facility in 1995, and the error dies responsible for the double die obverse variety were in use long enough to produce a number of affected coins that numismatists believe could be in the hundreds or possibly even low thousands. Most of them spent, worn, and lost to circulation forever, but some of them, perhaps, sitting untouched in old coin collections, in bank-wrapped rolls that were never opened, and the kind of forgotten. Containers that turn up in estate sales and attic cleanouts every single day across America. Every one of those potential discoveries represents not just a financial windfall, but a connection to a specific moment in American history. 1995, the Denver Mint, a die pushed just past its limit, a small metal circle stamped with an imperfection that decades later would be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes. So here's what we want you to take away from today's journey through these two extraordinary coins, the 1984D and the 1995D quarter dollars. The world of rare coins is not a closed museum display behind velvet rope. It is a living, breathing, ongoing story in which new chapters are written every time someone discovers something hidden in plain sight, something ordinary that turns out to be extraordinary, something spent 1,000 times over that was secretly carrying a fortune all along. The gap between a coin worth 25 cents and a coin worth $160 million can be as small as a barely visible doubling in a single letter, a mint mark placed with slightly too much or too little pressure, a die that ran just a little too long on a busy afternoon in Denver in 1995. That gap is narrow enough that any one of us could step across it at any moment, and that possibility, that glorious, suspenseful, life-changing possibility, is exactly why we do what we do here at Legacy Coins. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of today's video, because you have earned a perspective that most people never get, the knowledge that fortune is not always found in banks or stock markets or lottery tickets. Sometimes it is found in a quarter, and sometimes that quarter is already in your hand.